Good morning, viewers, and welcome to another lively edition of Breakfast Extra. And first, let me extend a heartfelt congratulations to our friends in Uganda on their new old leader. Yep, I said it, new old, pun fully intended. Because after decades of the same face and power, one can hardly call it a surprise, can we? Now let's pause and ask, what does this really mean? In Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni has been in power longer than many citizens have been alive. I include myself. That's not just experience, that's extended tenure. Decades in power may bring wisdom, yes, but they also bring a deep familiarity with rewriting constitutions, weakening opposition, and ensuring that every serious institution answers to just one office. The official story speaks of stability and progress, but the lived reality for many Ugandans tell us a different story, one where public resources rewards loyalty more than service, where policies focus on political survival instead of economic innovation, and defiance, but of course, yes, it's there, but often comes with consequences. Sometimes it looks like jail, sometimes it's silence, and on other occasions, it is both. Now, decades of personal rule may build resilience, yes, but the real question is resilience for whom? Because it is rarely the ordinary citizens trying to start that business, to access quality healthcare, or simply enjoy reliable electricity. Now, Nigerians, I want you to lean in, think carefully, and take a look in the mirror. Because while our democracy looks different on the surface, elections, parties, campaigns, even slogans, the patterns beneath feel similar, in fact, familiar. We may not have one man in power for 40 years, but we do have something just as stubborn, a revolving door of elites. The same faces move between the same two dominant parties, changing jerseys but playing the same game. Now, governments change, name changes, promised changes as well, but the outcomes strangely consistent. Policies stall, accountability becomes selective, and the public waits, hoping that maybe this time, just that one time, that panenka will actually make it to the back of the net. Uganda's problem is a personal rule. Nigeria's problem is elite capture. Different methods, but the effect is nearly identical. Now, institutions that should restrain power bend or break quietly. Reforms-minded politicians struggle to survive party structures built on rewarding loyalty, not ideas. Corruption thrives, not because Nigerians are cursed, but because the system is designed to protect itself. And then we ask why development feels like a pipe dream. Now, here is the uncomfortable truth. Whether power is held by one man for decades or by a same group of people taking turns, the result is the same. Governance becomes about survival, not service. Power becomes a private asset, not public trust. And citizens are left managing expectations instead of enjoying progress. Our institutions are not failing because they are weak on paper. They're failing because we, the politicians, we, the civil servants, we, the journalists and citizens, have allowed them to be bent to serve a few at the expense of many. So yes, it is time to wake up. It is. Wake up leaders who think the country exists to keep them relevant. Wake up voters who recycle the same names and expect different results. Yes, it is time to wake up the institutions before history writes another long chapter of wasted potential. And let's be honest, dear viewers, it is okay to smell the BS because protecting or pretending not to smell it hasn't helped us at all, has it? Now, Breakfast Extra isn't just about the morning coffee. It's about steering the conversations, asking the hard questions, and of course, refusing to be impressed by democracy that looks busy but doesn't actually work. So today, I leave you with this. Are we ready to demand more than recycled promises? Recycle parties and recycle leaders? Or will we keep applauding a system that keeps moving but never really moves forward? Welcome to Breakfast Extra. Mazino, really good to be here again.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Inam. Imagine what it's like wondering, who am I going to be with on Saturday this week? And of course, finding out that it's going to be you. Thank you very much. And what a way to look at what's happening inside of Africa, not just in Uganda, but how that compares to Nigeria here. I bet you not very many people have seen it like so before. The similarities where you have one man holding on to power, or here in Nigeria you have well, just two parties and the same recycled group of geriatrics inside of it. It's pretty much the same if you ask me.
That's right.
Yeah. But in any case, hey, why don't you come over and let's have some more conversation here.
Coming right up.
Indeed. Once again, good morning, and thanks for starting your day with us. My name is Mazino Appeal. Now, this morning, we're taking a very hard look at the state of the nation, from education to security, from housing to accountability, all of that inside of Breakfast Extra. We're going to begin in Abuja, where a public school in Chibiri community, where children are learning in conditions that raise serious concerns, serious questions, broken classrooms, missing facilities, and also years of neglect. We'll bring you this. It's a News Central exclusive, first here on Breakfast Extra. Also, to national security. Now, the Defense Headquarters has confirmed the foiled coup plot, with arrests made and also investigations ongoing, and what this means for Nigeria's democracy is what we're going to be visiting, and also the civil-military relationships. Also, former DSS Deputy Director Dennis Amakri is going to join us and break this down calmly and clearly so you understand what exactly happened or did not happen or was about to happen. And we'll then take a look here inside of Lagos. Makoko residents are protesting demolitions they describe as sudden and also unjust. Homes have been pulled down, people displaced, and arrests made. And we'll also visit Badagry inside of Waka Waka World. It's a town heavy with history, serving today as a place of remembrance and also learning. Much later on in the show, the trial of former Petroleum Minister Diezani Alison-Madueke, allegations of luxury spending, and boy, should you hear what it is she spent that money on, allegedly. And of course, bribery, and all of that is back in focus. So we'll examine the facts, the legal process, and what this case means for public trust here in Nigeria. So welcome once again. This is Breakfast Extra. There is one thing I'd like to discuss with my co-host here. Aha! Now, outside of everything that's had fact news, I was wondering whether you paid attention through the week to the visit of iShowSpeed to Africa, in particular to Nigeria. While everybody's talking about the missed opportunities when it comes to interviewers having the rubbishest, in quote, questions to ask, I'm focusing on something else. What did you think about the cultural exchange between iShowSpeed and Nigeria and iShowSpeed and the rest of Africa, the other African countries he visited? What did you think?
I mean, Mazino, would I be funny if I asked you, because you are Nigerian?
Uh-huh.
I want to ask you what you think first.
I'll tell you what I think. I think that Nigeria missed a small opportunity. Because when I look at what happened across the entire African continent on his visit to these places, I see them present him with curated culture for him to take back to the rest of the world and say, this is Africa. In Nigeria, we didn't treat iShowSpeed like as if he was an ambassador.
No.
We treated him like as if he was a trophy. We handed him that narrative and say, you tell our stories. We didn't curate our stories and say, this is our story and this is what we want the world to see. Nigeria was all about clout instead of culture. Not that we lacked culture, we have culture, but we just didn't curate it, if you get what I mean. And that's where the rest African countries have it above us, because they presented a curated cultural experience for him, and the rest of the world's like, oh my goodness, look, Africa is such a place. But in Nigeria, we made it seem like as if we're unintelligent beggars who simply just wants to be popular for notorious reasons. Hence why you have just the case of Egungun and what's the other guy? Pella trending as against every other cultural experience that he should have experienced. I talk too much.
No, you don't talk too much. No, your views
speak.
actually matter. I like listening to them because it allows me to analyze and piggyback. I mean, I did follow a few of his tours. I saw the South Africa one. I saw him in Morocco as well. I saw him in Ghana. And then, of course, Nigeria. I do agree with you in that in Nigeria, it wasn't so much, let's show you our culture. And I think I said this earlier, that Nigeria doesn't have a problem of culture.
No.
Nigeria has diverse culture. But unfortunately, sometimes we find a situation where when someone comes into our vicinity that we tend to feel, if there's an insecurity complex, that's the word. If there's an internal insecurity complex, when someone from somewhere that we deem as better comes in, our insecurity complex kills our pride. So we are proud about the fact that this is who we are and this is how we identify. We're not necessarily poor, because even if you were going to say we showed the poor factor, when two poor people are together, that's not what they talk about, you know? So I just feel like the confidence factor kind of died down when he came in, because according to them, he is doing better. So his culture somewhat is better than what we have to offer. So the clout thing came in, because it was like, if I if I have this guy on my video and in my content, I'm definitely going to make sense in Nigeria. So for them, it was a money-making level-up scheme.
Clout
and for him, it was,
culture.
let me just see your diversity, you know? Yeah. And I think if they did that, even if it was the lowest hanging fruit on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, if that person had said, well, let me take you around Makoko, though, you know, we're going to talk about that story later.
That's a point. You've just made a very good point. Why didn't we show him Makoko before it went down? Why did I call it like, why did we show him Makoko?
Well, Makoko. You know what? Interestingly enough, let me tell you, before we get into our story, so I don't want the producers to yell in our ear. Oddly enough, you know that I wanted to go to Makoko. And a friend of Makoko.
Say it right.
Makoko.
Good.
I wanted to go to Makoko.
Good.
And then a friend of mine was like, what are you going to go and see in Makoko? And I'm like, well, you know, there's Venice in Italy. And then she was like, that's definitely not Venice. That's not even, and she was like to me, that's not anything. It's not a tourist attraction.
So it shows you that we don't actually, we don't respect, we don't value what it is we have even as Nigerians.
Yes, because I mean, for me, I've never seen a city built on water. I've never seen it. And if it's in my backyard in Nigeria, whether it is a suburb of class or it is just a suburb of people trying to get by.
It's
personally,
an experience.
I felt like it deserved to be seen, but it was a Nigerian friend of mine that said,
discouraged
that's poverty. That's not a tourist attraction, you know?
I'm sorry you didn't get to see it.
And it's being demolished now.
Yeah, it is. Well, parts of it. There's still certain parts that will remain, but that's a conversation we're going to have inside of the show here. Welcome once again to Breakfast Extra. We're done with our banter. Now let's take you inside of the dailies, but let's do a break now, and we'll be bringing you the dailies. Thank you. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome once again. It's time for the dailies, and this morning we'll be starting toot sweet with the Weekend Trust. So if you'll join me, let's take a look at the front page, and it's got this big headline here, front and center. Electoral bills, what's at stake for 2027? A picture there of a ballot box with the word reform. Well, we've been talking plenty since last week about electoral reform, since the 2026 INEC retreat. What's going to happen? Well, we await and see. Plenty of talk about discrediting the new INEC chairman, Amukpita, by certain quarters, especially religious quarters. But perhaps we'll talk about that inside of the show today. Turaki led PDP to appeal judgment as court nullifies convention there. And Sanusi to remain Kano Emir, Governor Yusuf says, in the rise of female referees in Nigerian football. This is not a bad thing now, is it? And at the bottom, Kano, the violence within. I think that's talking about the instances from last week where we had an entire family wiped out, a case of femicide by a nephew. I don't know if you heard about that. It was very sad to hear. And coup, families of accused officers seek leniency. We'll talk about that. Abuja, a nation's capital, defaced by refuse. What's the FCT minister saying about this? I don't know. Let's move on now to the next daily. What do you have?
We are going to the Saturday Vanguard, and popping there in yellow, Nigerians back Governor Bago on single tenure for governors or GOV's president. And then right underneath under there, it says, say it will end corruption associated with a second term bid. And then, of course, there it says, attention Nigeria, capturing a new life of Zaki, a Benue king now in IDP camp. At the top there at the left, we've got court nullifies PDP Ibadan convention. It's victory for rule of law. And of course, there by health, we've got research says a brain cancer starts many years before detention. And then at the far right at the top, it says it's not curious. It's not curious that markets open its other East state on Mondays except Anambra. I think that's a question that needs to be answered. And then down at the bottom, we say a state's rejects of 1.9 trillion stalls January revenue distribution. And then at the second story there says industrializing Benue, how Governor Ayla is rebranding or rebuilding state economic bases. And then Grammy honors for Fela tomorrow. And then last at the bottom there, we've got 2027 issues as Oti battles ex-governors for the soul of Abia.
Congratulations to Fela, their posthumous award for Lifetime Grammy. I mean, that is big. Big question is how much Nigerian media plays Afrobeat, and I mean the real Afrobeat now, because I don't hear that much. So are we, like you said from before, do we respect our culture, our heritage, our people, our history as much as the rest of the world does? That's a question we really need to answer as Nigerians. Let's move on now to this day newspaper, and the first big headline that meets you, The Economist. After painful reforms, Nigeria's economy bearing results. We await to see how much of that result is reflected inside of our pockets. Until then, The jury is still out for the common man. Turaki faction appeals after court nullifies about a PDP convention. About the PDP convention, many say that this is the right, well, yeah, it's victory for rule of law, you might say. But then again, it also bears, it makes you see the ills and fractions inside of the party. And so close to 2027, can it heal? I don't know. Moving on now, there is a federal government takes over TAFUED, and also very neatly at the bottom there, Okonjo-Iweala urges Nigeria, Africa to double growth rates and aid dependency at the very top. Turaki faction, I think I read that one before. Fela Kuti becomes first African to receive Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. We mentioned that from a previous paper. What else do we have? The Saturday Independence, I hear.
Yes, in that big, bold, and black right there, it says how failed policy initiatives plunge Nigerians into persistent blackouts. That's nothing new. Occurring, of course, grid collapse. That is definitely nothing new. At the top there, in beautiful, we've got a picture of our president and the president of the United States. And it says, United States, Nigeria, deepen trade ties, expand opportunities for private sector-led growth. Right next to that, we've got Tinubu, Jonathan, Diri, Makinde, Obi, others pay last respects to late Bayelsa deputy governor. And at the bottom right there, the figures are 58.472 trillion naira, a Senate to pass 2026 budget in March. I'm looking forward to reading about that. And then the LG tussle. Osun High Court grants leave to quash criminal case against UBA. And then right underneath, on the left, we've got Ibadan High Court judgment. Turaki-led PDP heads to appeal court. And then right next to it, of course, ever interesting, Wike threatens Rivers government over stadium denial, vows force entry next time. And then, of course, last at the bottom there in red, we've got 7 signs you're in a wealthy person's house.
All righty. Let's move on now to another paper. The Guardian newspaper has got numerous headlines here. But we'll take just a few. Suspense in PDP as court nullifies Ibadan Convention, another iteration of the same matter we discussed from earlier. At the top, how bad roads insecurity drive high cost of agro commodities, goes without saying. And Unilag, Dundee's historic union, redefining global legal education for Nigerian students. To the side of the photo story here, Turaki-led NWC, I think that follows the main headline, main rubric for the headlines. I think I read that one before. Under the boxes here, Onitsha market closure, mayhem looms as IPOB declares total lockdown in the southeast. Let me explain. There is a movement in the southeast that supports Kanu, the IPOB leader. Recently, after his trial and him being jailed in Sokoto, well, the government is like, there's no need for all of this anymore. So let's stop this Monday sit-at-home thing that's been happening for a couple of months now, years, if I'm not mistaken. It's supposed to be in order to support the Kanu movement, but there's no need for that now. Trial has been passed, he's been sentenced, and all of that. So they're trying to get markets to open on Mondays. That will be a start to bring in people out. It's a sort of protest to say we're going to take one day out of the entire week, and that hurts the economy of the state, whether you like it or not, and other things as well. So the governor is saying, you better get back to the markets. If you don't, I'm going to shut down the markets, which he did for 1 week because they didn't resume on Monday. He's like, okay, you know what? The rest 4 days are out. You guys are not going to be opening this market. Now there's a pushback on that one. So I wonder where this is going to go. I hope it's not going to be that much of a problem because these things kind of get hairy, especially in the southeast.
Eventually they do.
NNPC unveils Gas Master Plan 2.0. Is that 2.0? I see it. 2.0. Milestone represents Nigeria's development aspirations and says ECBO. And very lastly, for The Guardian, Tinubu's government won't abandon Nigerians. Shatima reassures commissions Tudunbiri resettlement scheme. That's most of the headlines. In fact, all of them for the front page of The Guardian newspaper this morning. I don't think we have another paper. Or do we have time for another paper? Yes, I think we do. We've got The Nation. Do you want to take The Nation there? Or would you let me? I'll take The Nation.
Go ahead.
The Nation newspaper here. Dispute over 1.9 trillion FAC funds delays January salary nationwide. Whew, I got mine.
Thank goodness for that.
Albeit with a few deductions.
Thank goodness for that. Thank goodness for that.
Well, that's not that bad, but well, hey. Now here's the thing. While there are people who would say that the deductions were not much for them, poverty is something that you can't look at from your status and say that it applies everywhere else.
Yeah, right.
Those kinds of deductions, if it applies to anybody else, especially lower down the order, it's going to take a toll on them. And I'm worried to know exactly how much people lost with the new order when it comes to the tax reforms that's gone into action. And that was what everybody was waiting for, to see what their salary earners, to see what's going to be deducted. Plenty of conversation there, but yeah, perhaps we'll come back to that tomorrow's show. PDP faction dig in as court nullifies the Ibadan Convention. The Economist, Nigeria's economy moving from the brink. Amen. Sit at home. Soludo's solution faces test on Monday. This is what I'm telling you about the markets. We'll resume Monday trading if security is guaranteed, says traders. So the traders are now agreeing to go back to the market, but they must be secured. The state has to provide the apparatus to make sure that they are not under any threat from the movement. And educators, business people relive ordeal flouting order because they had tried to flout this before and it caused a lot of mayhem. So you would understand their apprehension. Whew, that's it for the nation. And indeed, I think you've got
Punch.
The Punch newspaper.
A final one is the Punch. I hope is last but not least. Such an interesting layout of the newspaper. In bold right there, it says a crusade row, rattles can, and of course the PFN. And then it says a cleric decrees sabotage, Akwa Ibom knocks pastor for hate speech. And then right underneath there, it says popular preacher Omolane to assemble lawyers for a PFN dissolution. And then, of course, right at the top under the Punch, it says annulled PDP convention, Turaki fumes and Wike's camp celebrates. And then, of course, in green there with Mr. Trump himself, it says Nigerians self-deport amid Trump's deadly ICE raids. That's an interesting one.
I mean, hey, we like our dignity.
Very much. Don't drag, and you know the way they've been dragging everybody?
No, yeah, no. The only ice we want is iced tea. You know, we'll just leave on our own accord. You just, hold back your ice. Thank you very much.
Right next to that is how Nollywood actor was arrested over failed coup plot. I did not think that one would be something that would happen in Nigeria. And then, of course, right above that, it says Oshun LG accounts. The court issues arrest warrant against UBA and 3 top officials. And then, of course, we've got the pictorial content right there. And then right next to it, it says counterfeit empire. Lagos elections markets where fake products sustain luxury.
There's a palace in Nigeria. It's not today, meaning it's not just begun. It's been since. It's been there since.
You want to address it like it's just happening.
Yeah, you just late to class. We've known this for a bit. There's still one more paper. The producers are intent on making us squeezing the dailies this morning, so we're going full out and giving you every single paper. The Saturday Tribune here is next, and we've got security forces probe use of drones by terrorists. Sorry, let me take that again because I think I read it wrong, unless it's actually accurate. Security forces probe use of drones by terrorists. Are you saying that the terrorists have drones? Unbelievable. Find this on page 3. Going to make very interesting read for the Tribune. I'm definitely going to see that one after the show. I haven't yet read it. PDP crisis, court voids Ibadan Convention. We see this on every daily. It's a big deal. And Oyo at 50. Our state is progressing by God's grace, says Makinde. Tinubu's re-election, Rivers setting pace. Wike. No northern candidate can defeat Tinubu, says Ganduje. An appeal court, the very top now, upholds death sentence of 5 of our bank robbery suspects. Oh, you should have seen this robbery. There was the kind of stuff movies are made out of. It was a big deal. Many years ago, however. And Oshun LG accounts, court issues arrest warrants against UBA, 3 top officials. And I think one from a human angle point, my wife stole my money after standing as my guarantor, ruined me, about a man tells court. And I think that's about it for the Saturday Tribune. If I'm not mistaken, that would be all for the dailies this morning. Thank you very much, Inam, and also everybody for watching on that segment. Let's move now. We're going to be moving to our first conversation. And only after the break, we'll bring you a very interesting big story, one that might make the emotions well up, but stay tuned and you'll find out soon.
You are welcome back to Breakfast Extra. Now, in the nation's capital, where power and policy converge, a community school is quietly falling apart. Classrooms without roofs, children learning on bare floors, a teacher struggling without basic tools. The question is simple and unsettling. How does something like this really happen in Abuja? Our correspondent Aisha Saliu went to Chibiri community in Kuje Area Council to see what learning looks like when government presence is absent. Our correspondent spoke with pupils, with teachers and community leaders who say the neglect has lasted for years, despite repeated appeals for help. Here now is our special but somber report by Aisha Saliu.
The place is not conducive for learning.
Even animal cannot live here. Talk of human being to learn.
How can you learn here? We have to pack the JS3A and B into one class. If they are writing, they hardly can place their books to write. All the girl students of the junior secondary school from JS1 to 3 are using one toilet. And this is where they are using. JS1 to 3 boys and girls.
As a mother, I will not allow my child to come here because this place is really bad.
The government are not helping matters. Doctor will bring a form for you to sign, and when you know you are not signing, you have a call from above and say, sign it. Your job is at stake, you just sign it.
It's very, very shameful that we are in what? FCT, Abuja.
Abuja, the capital city of Nigeria, defined by skyscrapers, prominent government institutions, and a calm, well-planned metropolitan environment. Yet, within the city of order and promise exists a community whose story reveals a strikingly different reality. This public primary and secondary school tells a painful story, not through words, but through crumbling walls, broken roofs, and forgotten dreams. Located in the heart of Chibiri community, within the Kuje Area Council of the Federal Capital Territory. This is meant to be a place of learning. Instead, it has become a daily reminder of neglect. Roofs and ceilings have collapsed, leaving classrooms exposed to harsh weather. Doors and windows are long gone, offering neither safety nor comfort to pupils and teachers.
As you can see, this building is the newest building in this compound, and that is the oldest. That is the oldest building, but you can see the way this one became. Up till today that we're talking to you, government could not supply us seats, could not supply us desks, and we went on using the PTA to repair some of the chairs for us. And you can see the roof. The place is not conducive for learning. Even for the teachers, it's not conducive for them. When it is raining, we will ask the students to go because they wouldn't have a place to stay. So we have been having a lot of challenges. We don't have labs, we don't have training pitches, nothing.
This is earlier primary school Chibiri, and this school was established 1976. Since then, the school is facing a lot of problems in terms of facility and enrollment. What causes this is because the facility are not enough, and the parents are deciding to take their children to private school. In fact, when we talk of education, education is the bedrock of every society, and when education is not functioning, the society will collapse. We demand for amendment, but yet the government did not listen to us. We have been up and down, writing to the board, writing to our local levels. So up to now, nothing is done. So we are appealing to government to come and assist us and put this thing in place for us.
Some of our parents are driving away their children from the school because, as you can see, even animals cannot live here. Talk of human being to learn.
There are no staff rooms, no adequate offices for school administrators. Also, an absence of power infrastructure to assist the students in taking science classes.
We don't have admin block. All of us are sharing with the students. We don't have admin block, and it is a classroom that we converted to a staff room. This is the VP admin's office. During rainy season, if you enter this office, the water will reach you almost knee level. I am taking you to the Senior Master Administration Office, where I evacuated the VP admin to. From here, you can see, this is the VP admin's table, and this is the Senior Master Administration table, and this is the Senior Mistress Academics Office. You can see the table that the Senior Mistress Academics is using is students' table. We don't even have electricity in this place. We need electricity for conducive learning, and then give us a lab. How I wish I was here on time to show you some of the things that students are making by their hands, and that they need the light to have worked them. But we don't have light, we don't have generator, nothing. And yet, when we want to write exam, we say BST, that is using computer base. So how can you use computer base when you don't have it here for the computer teacher to put the student through? We have a lot of challenges.
If the environment is not conducive, no parent will allow their children to come to school. Let's assume there is rain now. As a mother, I will not allow my child to come here because this place is really bad.
This school was a rich school, but it's poor today. It's poor today because there is no classes. We have about 7 good classes, but all has been destroyed by wind disaster, rain disaster. In the rainy season, you cannot come here. And anybody that have a child will not be happy for a child, his child to come here. It's only one class now is manageable, that the ceiling is still hanging, and they combine the whole student there. Because of this condition of school, students are no longer in this place. It's very, very shameful that we are in FCT, Abuja, but come and see this school. Many schools in different states are better than this place. It's very unfortunate that the contractors that give them this work, they did not do the right thing. They brought a fake zinc. In fact, everything is poor. It needs to be renovated in a proper way. They should give a genuine person that have fear of God that will come and do this work here. We are praying that even this information will reach to our minister.
Equally troubling is the complete absence of accessible wash facilities, few toilets, no clean water. Pupils and staff are forced to use alternatives, a situation that raises serious health and dignity concerns.
Apart from the PTA staff, all of us are using this toilet, male and female. We have 100 and something boys in this school, and this is where they are using. It's not all that clean, but we don't have an alternative. Is it going to the bush? During the rainy season, we are afraid of reptiles, that we cannot go to the bush. See where we have the girls' toilet. They are also 100 because we have 204 students. So these are the girls' toilet. All the girls of these schools are using here. So if 2 girls are pressed at the same time, they will have to be waiting. This one you are seeing, these 2 buildings are being constructed by an individual, Barrister Yakubu. They are still under construction. We've not started using them. And why does he come to start doing this? Was when he came to the school and discovered that the whole 32 staff, including the PTAs, they are using one toilet, both male and female. And then the whole male students from JS1 to JS3 are using one toilet.
Yet, in the midst of decay, hope refuses to die. These children continue to show up every day, eager to learn, determined to dream, even as their school falls apart. It is clear that urgent intervention is needed as teachers, school administrators, and residents are appealing to the Kuje Area Council to act swiftly by rehabilitating the classrooms, providing learning materials, constructing wash facilities, and restoring dignity to public education. Until action is taken, the future of these children remains uncertain, trapped between their dreams and a system that has failed to protect them. In Chibiri community, Kuje Area Council Abuja, for News Central, Aishat Salihu.
of something that's supposed not to be that emotional ordinarily. Well, it is. We're now joined by News Central correspondent Aisha Salihu, and also joining us is Dantani Ndaman, Development Committee Chairman, Chibiri Ward. You're welcome, Aisha and Dantani. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's get confirmation that you are with us first off. Aisha, are you with us?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I am. Good morning.
And Dantani is also with us. Fantastic. Tell you what, let's go on a very short break before we go into the conversation. But welcome. We'll be back after this.
You're welcome back. Before the break, we had a special report, and we are joined right now by our correspondent, Aisha Salihu. Aisha, I'm going to come to you very quickly. I know during the break I asked you what the emotion and atmosphere was like shooting something like that. I know literally when the video came on, I saw that broken roof and I felt my heart shatter. So I'd just like to hear from you. How was it covering something like that?
Well, I would say it was really emotional. Although I'm not supposed to put in my emotions, but then I couldn't help myself. It was really emotional for me because it speaks to a broader issue of neglect. You can see children, school children, who are willing to turn up every day to come to school, but then to find out that the system is failing them, continuously failing them. I mean, we have issues with infrastructure. There are no facilities for them to use. And we have even gone beyond the issue of welfareism. I mean, teachers are always complaining that they are underpaid. They are not being paid much for the effort they put into the future of our nation, which is the children. But then for these children who continue to come to school, to then come to school and see that there are no facilities, no wash facilities, no power infrastructure, the ceilings of their classrooms, you can see clearly dilapidated. I mean, all of this is very, very emotional, and it's heartbreaking, even for their own parents, because you could see some residents saying they wouldn't even want to send their children to this school, and you wouldn't blame them. And now look at how the cost of education, so now having to send your child to a private school because the public school available, it's not conducive for learning for your kids, especially for the kind of education you would want them to have. It's really heartbreaking, and it's very disappointing that the government continues to fail them in that manner.
I'm actually holding back the emotions. I don't know why. I feel really strange. But Aisha, I think my next question was going to be what struck out to you the most when you arrived at the school. But I think I'm going to change that question because something struck out for us in the studio. And that was that when it came to the senior management, I don't know if you guys shot maybe over the weekend or why that might have happened, but we didn't see any principal or senior management on the premises. Why was that?
No, the man that was actually taking us around is the senior management. He's the senior teacher in the school. There was also a head teacher from the primary school. They were the ones who took us around the school. I mean, when we arrived at the school, they were very excited that at least the media is finally here. If at all the minister is saying he hasn't seen this before, now he gets to now see it. If at all the area council chairman is saying he hasn't seen this before, now he now gets to see. So they were willing to take us round, and they also said they have written countless times to the secretariat, to the authorities involved that should do the needful, and they keep saying, keep in view, keep in view. And then sometimes they told them, are you the only school? So why are you always coming up with your complaints and all that? It was very, very devastating. I mean, one thing that stood out for me immediately I entered into the school premises was the state of the classrooms. I mean, we saw some classrooms that had no chair, no tables, nothing. Even some of the chairs and tables that were there were broken. And the school management also mentioned that some of the chairs and tables we see in those other classrooms that they managed to put those children now were fixed by the PTA. So money is gotten from the Parents Teachers Association, where what they use in fixing those other classrooms. So technically, the government has completely abandoned that school. They're not attending to them. Even the teachers, the staff have no sufficient staff room that would accommodate them. You saw the VP admin's office. They are all in the same office. You saw their table. You saw their books. I mean, it's really terrible.
Aisha, it was a very sad picture to actually see, and that you experienced that, or even that it exists especially that this is the FCT, is very worrying. We also have Diezani Alison-Madueke with us. Diezani Alison-Madueke is the Development Committee Chairman, Chibiri Ward. Diezani, thank you very much for joining us. However, we are aware that we can't show your video for technical reasons, but we do have your audio. Please, will you confirm that you're with us, Diezani?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Fantastic.
The whole staff of the News Center, Abuja.
Thank you, Diezani. Diezani, our drone shot there inside of that report actually revealed something very interesting. I could see right next to the school a piece of road that seems to only have newly been, what's the word now? Help me out, Inam. It's just been renovated. It's just been
tarred.
Yeah, tarred.
Maybe.
So I'm wondering the contrast between that new piece of road and then the school in such a state. How long has this community been dealing with this when it comes to the neglect of that particular school as against other projects that might be going on in the FCT? Diezani, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Diezani, I'm wondering how long this neglect has been for.
It has been for almost getting to about 3 years now. It's almost 3 years now. We, as the other communities, my other people have said, the headmaster and the head teacher of General Secondary School, Chibiri, have rightly said, we write so many letters to different organizations, different set of government, from local government to the FCT. Nobody has responded up to now. As my colleagues have said, nobody will want or will wish his child to be in that kind of environment. The environment is no longer conducive for learning. As you can see, seeing is believing. We are not saying it in a radio set. We are videoing it for everybody to see. I didn't think it was just a voice call. They say it's just something that just the framing, but you can see it yourself, and other people are seeing it. Chibiri is along Wagoleda Road. Schools is like this. What more of the community that are far away from the roadside? How will their school look like if Chibiri community school is looking like this?
Diezani, who were these letters written to? Who did you write these letters to? And
they write to local education authority here. You understand? And this Gilmore, this company constructing Chibiri Wagoleda Road, we even write to them that they should come to our aid. They come and check every time, no response to that our request.
Diezani, is this the only school in the community? And what are the residents of this community doing? Have they also made their displeasure known to the authorities?
This school was established in 1975. But you can see how school looks like now. So we try, by all means, through our community efforts. As I've told you before, we write to so many organizations to come to our aid. Anytime they are going for election, we carry the guys of the incumbent and those people that will be elected next coming. We carry them to this school to check so that when they come, they should do something. Up to now, nobody has responded to us. So we don't know how to do. We try to some management through our PTA, but our PTA cannot do this. We need help from government. We need help from FCT. We need help from area council so that these are people will fight back.
Wow, that's a long time. Since 1975, that's older than me, and I'm a dinosaur. That's a long time too.
I mean, and I'm wondering if they're saying there's no electricity now. From back then until now, there's never been electricity in that. I don't
know. Aisha, how many students go to this school? Did you find out?
Well, this school, they have hundreds of students that come in, day out, but from the rate of dilapidation that you can clearly see, some parents have had to now take their children out of their school because of the fact that they're saying that their children can't continue to learn in this environment. I mean, they mentioned during the rainy season, you can imagine what happens during the rainy season. The school now has to find a classroom that still has its ceiling intact to move the students into that particular space. And you can imagine how many pupils and students are being jam-packed into one classroom or two classrooms to take their lessons when they don't take the same courses or the same subjects. So it's really terrible. And to answer to the first question you asked about the road construction going on there, they mentioned that the minister actually came and commissioned that particular road going on there because they didn't used to be, they didn't have an accessible road in that area before now. And they thought that even as the minister came, he would turn his attention to the school because the school is just right by the roadside. So, but till now, it seems as if the road is just the focus. It's just the priority area for the minister and even perhaps the area council.
Aisha, again, such a sad situation because I could never imagine a situation where, you know, I have a child sitting in a situation like that. But I think my question to you is, outside of the fact that, you know, there are certain questions that we've always had, you know, surrounding education and children in Nigeria that we tend to ask the government. And it's unfortunate that as we see some of the things that are happening, we make these, we give ourselves these answers. But I wanted to hear from you. I know that it's a sensitive situation, but were you able to engage some of the students and just get an understanding from them about, you know, how they feel being at school? They may not know any better because perhaps they've not been to another school, but what was the atmosphere like and the mood for the children?
Well, it was obvious. I think it was pretty obvious that the place is not comfortable for the students, for the pupils. But you know how kids are. They are always eager to learn. They are eager to participate, to, you know, have an activity to do in school. Just like the head teacher even mentioned, he said that if not because they lack power infrastructure, you could see what the children are making with their hands at the school lab, but then there is no light to complete some of those projects. The children are always excited, but then they're not happy about the state of the school. However, they're happy about coming to school to learn. So it just boils down, and it behoves on the government to see that you have children who are not staying back at home. They're still willing to come, especially for parents who are still taking their children to that school. So it's now a responsibility of the government to do right by these children to fix their school.
And then, Aisha, sorry, just one last thing, because, you know, it takes so much to equip a child to perform, you know, to the best of their ability. When we're looking at like the pass rates and, you know, the what do you call them in Nigeria, perhaps the GPAs and stuff like that, I know they're still young. In terms of performance now, from an educational standpoint,
how are they doing?
Are the children performing according to standard?
Well, clearly, when they are disallowed to take some subjects due to, you know, facilities that are not available, I don't think one would expect for them to perform as much as those who are privy to taking those subjects as it when due. That is why some parents said they are moving their children from that school to private school where they're sure that they would get the education that they ought to get, the kind of education, the quality education they ought to get. So I think there should be a complete overhaul for the school. There should be complete overhaul, not just facility and infrastructure wise now. I also think there should be overhaul for the kind of teachers that should be brought into these schools. I mean, in the time past, many people used to go to public schools because they felt at the time that it was there you could get the quality of education you would. I mean, when the private education sprang up, but now it now looks like the reverse is the case. So many people are now moving to private schools and abandoning the public school that should even give you the standard of education that one needs.
Well, Aisha, that was a remarkable report. It was very emotional even for us here. We felt that. Thank you very much, Aisha Salihu. Thank you very much, Dantani Ndaman, also for joining us. Aisha, I would like you to please give a shout out, yes, indeed, to your editor. So please, who edited that, because he did a very fine job. Who was it?
Yeah, Sam C. So shout out to Sam C.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Aisha. Thank you very much, Damanti. Thank you. Now, let's stay put for, well, first the news, and then we've got more conversation inside of Breakfast Extra. We'll be back. And you're welcome back. It's time for our first major headline bulletin for the day here inside of Breakfast Extra. My name is Mazino Appeal. Now, our Federal High Court in Ibadan has nullified the People's Democratic Party's national convention held on November 15th, 2025. The court barred members of the Taminu Turaki-led National Working Committee from presenting themselves as the national officers of the PDP. It also recognized the caretaker committee led by Mohammed Abdurrahman and Senator Samuel Anyanwu as the only legitimate NWC of the party, pending a valid national convention. The ruling marks the latest development in the ongoing crisis rocking the party.
Everybody must listen and obey the directions and orders of the court. The claimants came to court seeking a stamp of judicial approval to the illegal convention they held on the 16th of November 2025 here in Ibadan. And the court came out strongly to say that that convention was null and void because it was conducted in flagrant disobedience of two judgments of this same Federal High Court, and to come back to taunt the same court by asking the court to approve what you did was just an exercise in futility. So that convention is gone. In addition, the court nullified all the decisions that were taken at that convention. So the so-called will I say contraption or executive committee that was purportedly elected and headed by a national working committee that was purportedly elected at that convention has been set aside completely by the court. And in addition, the court held that PDP can only operate as of today through the caretaker committee. And it was inevitable and inescapable that a caretaker committee should take over the affairs of the...
Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party has dismissed the Federal High Court judgment nullifying its November 2025 National Convention, insisting its current leadership remains in place. Now, in a statement issued by the party's factional National Publicity Secretary, Comrade Ini Emenobong, said the court declined to grant the order of mandamus sought because doing so would amount to sitting on appeal over decisions of courts of coordinated jurisdiction. The party disclosed that it has instructed its legal team to immediately file an appeal and pause all available legal options to protect its position. The PDP caretaker chairman for South-South region, Emmanuel Ogidi, and lawyer Liberus Oshoma joined us earlier yesterday on the story, and we'll bring you more on that later. President Bola Tinubu and former President Goodluck Jonathan were among the dignitaries who attended the funeral rites of the late Bayelsa State Deputy Governor, Senator Lawrence Ehu Jirakbo. A requiem mass was conducted at St. Paul's Catholic Church of Foni, Sagbama, local government area of Bayelsa State, a tribute to the 60-year-old late Deputy Governor. President Tinubu, who was represented by the Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Senator Heineken Lukobiri, joined others to eulogize the late Ekuriapo.
We can confidently say Brother Ojako lived a fulfilled and worthy life. One who finds acceptance to God, commitment to humanity, and devotion to the effort of Bayelsa State. He will be remembered for his intellect, his wisdom, his thoughtful use of proverbs, and his rare ability to combine depths with words.
Everybody speaks good of Lawrence. It's very difficult for a politician who managed to get to the level of a deputy governor of a state to have that kind of image Lawrence was a good man. He related well with people.
May the soul of His Excellency Senator Lawrence find repose and abiding love of God. May his memory be forever a blessing to us.
The Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria has launched electric air-to-city shuttle buses in a major move to transit to the use of green energy and reduce its carbon emission footprint by as much as 74%. The service was launched at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja as FAN officials pledged to transform its mode of operation. The movement of people out of the airport and its energy conservation strategy. Former national chairman of the All Progressives Congress and now chairman of FAN board, Abdullahi Ganduje, says that the action by FAN will align Nigeria's aviation sector with global best practices.
Marks an important milestone in FAN's ongoing efforts to improve service delivery, modernize airport operations, and align Nigeria's aviation sector with global best practices. As part of this deployment, FAN is introducing 10 electric shuttle buses and 20 electric saloon vehicles into airport operations.
Ground transportation services will operate through structured, traceable electronic systems. This promotes transparency, enhances revenue accountability, improves passenger convenience, and reduces reliance on cash transactions.
We gather at a time when the impact of climate change is no longer an abstract discussion. It is a lived reality. We see it in rising temperatures, more frequent and extreme weather events, flooding and environmental degradation that threatens our infrastructure, our economy, and the well-being of our people. As an airport management company, we recognize that the sector contributes to global emissions, and we accept our responsibility to be part of the solution. We must transform the way we operate, the way we move our people, and the way we consume energy across our airport.
Now, outside Nigeria, in a tit-for-tat move, both South Africa and Israel have expelled each other's envoys. While South Africa expelled Israel's top diplomat in the country for violating diplomatic norms, Israel took the same path in retaliation. The diplomatic row started when South Africa's Foreign Affairs Ministry declared Ariel Saidman chargé d'affaires at the Israeli embassy persona non grata and gave him 72 hours to leave the country. Hours later, Israel announced similar action against South Africa's ambassador to Palestine, Sean Edward. Relations between South Africa and Israel have been frosty since South Africa accused Israel of genocide against Palestinians at the International Court of Justice, a charge Israel has rejected. And that's all the headline news this bulletin. Do stay with us. Coming up at 10, we'll bring you another one. But in between then, great conversation inside of Breakfast Extra. Do stay with us.
And out to our big story, where Nigeria's military has confirmed what had circulated quietly for weeks, a foiled coup plot involving serving and retired officers. Arrests have been made, investigations are ongoing, and those indicated are expected or indicted are expected to face a military trial. This development raises serious questions about discipline within the ranks and the strength of our democratic institutions. And now the defense headquarters say the plot was uncovered early, preventing any disruption to the national security. But the confirmation itself has reopened old anxieties in the country with a long history of military intervention in politics.
So to help us understand what this means for national stability, civil-military relations, and also public trust, we're joined by Dr. Dennis Amakri, former Deputy Director of the Department of State Services. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. And also we're joined by Augustine Edgar. He's a security and cyber expert. Augustine, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Gentlemen, let me start with the doctor. Doctor, I'm wondering, let's talk about the civil-military relationship here. With the coup being confirmed now by the authorities, something that was, denied from before, what does this say about the relationship between the civil-military relationship?
Well, civil-military relationship has remained very tacky with the intervention of the military into governance, starting from, I think, in the 60s. In the 60s, where after the most countries got their independence, I think most of them fell to military rule. In fact, at the time, the whole of West Africa was ruled by military governments, right? Like 1975, I think most governments were military. But again, they came in because of different kinds of, reasons. Some come in because they feel that the civilians were not doing very well, and they have to take over the government. But of course, military rule, when you plan these coups and you fail, then you are in for death. And if you win, then of course you win the government.
Dr. Makri, that this was even a thought by members inside of the military. I'm wondering what that in itself says about the institution of the military itself. I don't know if this was an ideological thing, or if it was maybe something based on personal, well, it's beginning to point so, something simply based on personal disenfranchisement. So I'm wondering what you think on this ground here. Do we have a weakened military institution in that case?
The reason for intervention is different, has been different. In the early days, in fact, when we have the first wave of coups in West Africa, the reason for intervention was different, where either, misbehavior of politicians, East-West, the Cold War, the Cold War, most of the coups were even sponsored by Western powers. Western powers. So either you are in for Russia or China or France, or you are for United States, and that happened. But the recent ones, which is in the 1920s, 2020s, is a different one altogether, because here, most of them were coming in for personal reasons. Some of them were basically feeling that, the civilians are not doing very well, or there is an elongation of, should I say, the tenure of the civilian government and stuff like that. So the reasons are different from that first wave to this second wave.
I'd like to go to Augustine. Augustine, I did a bit of research, and it kind of shocked me to find out that since 2010 alone, there have been over 68 coups in Africa. Of course, some have been successful and some have not. Now, my question to you is, what drives the need for, retired and currently, serving military personnel to want to use this tactic or technique to try and restructure democracy and a country?
Well, thank you. From what my senior colleague have just analyzed, I think we are not far from, he has laid a very good foundation and a background for us to carry through. It could be like I will just go through the one I met from the 80s. Even from the past president that just passed on, Buhari and all that, they've always been a reason. And their reason will be hinged on economic hardship. They will give several reasons. You see several reasons that try to convince the public that this coup was worth it. They will talk about the rascality of politicians, the corruption of politicians, the hardship in the country. And these have always driven this coup plotting to remove governments and then try to form one, which in the end, they don't always succeed. Also in Africa, like my colleagues say, they've always been a foreign undertone, beating the drum somewhere for them to do it. And but the recent ones, like the one I will see in Nigeria that's happened, I would military that they have been very disciplined and very committed to democracy. I will say this because the one we've had before the reasons for those coups, the go on and all of that, was not sufficient reason. That what we experience today is not even up to what they experienced that time, and they were coups. And so for now, they have maintained their discipline from that time till now. And you believe that in our own country, in Nigeria, there have been a lot of trouble that we could say, okay, it's justifiable. But I think they are not supposed to. And with this, I think the reason for it, they see some kind of, from the reasons I saw, from the indices I really watched out for, they're not aggrieved to a very great extent by the numbers of the coming from an interest group, an interest, a geo-interest particular place. That is, this one now has to be with an individual thing. Whether they are going there
go ahead and tell us,
to make some reforms, some constitutional reform.
You can be specific, Augustine. Would like to know your opinion.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Be specific. You were pointing to an individual interest from a specific part of the country, and I'm asking you to go ahead and tell. It's an opinion.
Yes, it's my opinion. I'm sharing my opinion because from the number of the officers that are alleged, from now, before they said there was nothing, but now from the numbers that have been alleged, we can see the higher number coming from the north. It's an indication that there have been, the beating of the drum have come from somewhere around that area because they felt disfavored. And these are always the ground for military coups. I will also talk about the one they had in Egypt. Egypt had a very serious issue too. And the current president was able to maneuver that, military setting, and then took over, and there was a constitutional reform, and he's now the current democratic president of that nation. But in our case, we've not always had it like that. It always play around to be a particular interest. And in the end, we don't see Nigeria coming up with a new constitution, something that's going to help Nigeria stand. That is my point.
Okay. Very interesting, but I'm going to put one on top of that. Now, you say that this is coming from the north, and I'm wondering, Dr. Makri, do you think that this also has anything to do with ideological contagion? And I'm saying this because of the number of coups that we've seen in the West African region and the proximity with these influences, like Augustine has just said, with the Sahel belt. Dr. Makri, any thoughts on that?
Oh, yes. He's very, very correct. When you look at the Sahelian area, what is happening in those areas are different because they are either fighting for economic or elongation of governance, devoid of ethnicity or religion. But in Nigeria, we have had a history of coups that are, skewed towards either religion or ethnicity. If you remember very well, the very first coup we had, they said it was an Igbo coup because the guy who led it was an Igbo. But of course, there are other elements from Yoruba and, even in the north that were part of it. But it was an Igbo coup, and the counter coup that came after that, was like a revenge, or should you say a correction, for that Igbo coup. So, and then of course we have series of, palace coups, which were the military themselves toppling each other. And funny enough, all those series of palace coups were Northerners doing it to themselves, And of course, when you look at all that, you can see the coloration, and of course, with this particular one, many people looked at it and said, "Oh, these are Northern guys. What is going on? Is it somebody? Because remember something: all coups are being sponsored by civilians. And it will be nice if." the investigation will lead us towards there, where we will now find out who were the sponsors of this particular one.
Dr. Makri, I'm curious to know, we measure the success of coups as the military actually succeeding in taking over and gaining the power. But my question is, when we're talking about success, how many countries, because again, like I said, since 2010, we've got 68 coup attempts and those that actually fell through. How do we look at countries, or I guess in your view, outside of, you know, everyone praising Captain Ibrahim Traoré and some of the Sahel juntas, what country, is there a country in Africa right now that, of course, went through a coup and is actually doing well?
Traoré is doing very well, but I looked at between 2024 or 2021 to 2000 and present day, and we'll find out that within this period, we've had 7 successful coups and 5 attempted, 5 attempted, that's the ones that failed. For the ones that are successful, like the one in Burkina Faso, even the one in Mali and Niger, these 3 countries have formed the AES, the Sahelian state, countries, and I think they have a popular support behind them. That's why when ECOWAS tried to, sanction them, they didn't feel much about it because they feel that their country was behind them, and that's another thing about coups. If there is no popular support, it usually fails. But if there are popular support, you find out that people will even come out on the streets to dance and protest and singing, So that's the barometer with which you want to maybe check to see whether they are popular or not popular.
Augustine, let me come to you. Now, you've just heard Dr. Makri tell 7 successful coups, 5 attempted ones. Recently, we saw the one from Benin Republic, and then there was Guinea-Bissau, and now Nigeria. These are all West African states. It's not like as if they're outside all by themselves. They're all bound by one union, and that's ECOWAS. And I'm wondering where ECOWAS' responsibility lies here when it comes to strengthening institutional faith in democracy, the faith of institutions like the military in democracy. What do you think the responsibility of ECOWAS is, Augustine?
I will. When I listen to the founders of ECOWAS, that is former President Gowon, he said that it was mainly founded for economic purpose. To strengthen the economic ties of these West African nations. And I think he frowned at the issue of the breakup of these Sahel nations. We talk of Burkina, Mali, and Niger. And also the sanctions that came after the coup plotting. General Gowon was not happy about it, because if we have to ask anything about ECOWAS, hear from, they are the fathers that founded it. Meanwhile, I think even when you look at the AU, there's a lot of complaint. There's a global, let's say African-wise, they are also complaining that the AU is not doing enough to protect the interests of Africa. So if that is so, we also had the reasons that these Sahel nations gave concerning ECOWAS. And they see it as a one-sided game. They see that ECOWAS is being manipulated by the foreign bodies, the foreign players. They don't trust it in ECOWAS. Like you see, I just read 2 days yesterday, Ibrahim Traoré has even abolished all the political parties. He said that is a way of the foreigners penetrating their system. So ECOWAS, as it stands now, I think they need to look inward. I think after that, they have tried to have a series of means to see how they can strengthen the internal system. They are not really looking after this, the real interest of the African nations or the bodies that make up ECOWAS. And this is why this breakup was very easy. And so I think the reason they should look inward, have meetings, and then continue to deepen their ties. They should always follow up what really makes them to stand, what makes them stand strong as ECOWAS from the founding days to today. If those things are not checked, we're going to see more breakups. We'll still see more breakups.
Augustine, it was obvious what the authorities were trying to do when they kept this information away from the public. it would have seemed that they were trying to safeguard the public from panic. But then again, the public also deserves transparency when it comes to these processes. In fact, transparency is what builds trust between the public and the authorities. Now, what should we be looking forward to with this military trials, with the arrests and the names that have been called? Now, remember now, I'm asking based on that transparency concept.
Is that for me?
No, it's for Augustine.
I think, okay, I will react to this that even in the past, I remember those days, if you were in the 80s when we have a war against discipline by the popular government that have just passed, some of these things are done for deterrent. In security, we call it a deterrent strategy, whereby if something happened like this, there should be a very strong punitive measure. This is to send a message to others that are willing or are still trying to do similar things that this is not acceptable. It is not a conduct that we accept. So I think the Nigerian military, I think they have resolved like to support democracy. And so by naming and shaming these people who took part in this coup, and like my senior colleague said, they should not only, the military guys cannot really succeed. They cannot succeed in any coup without the civilian sponsorship. The finance is from the civilians. So just like they are tracing all the fundings of Ukram and all of that, they should also trace the funding of this military coup, this very one that took place. So with this, we will know that this conduct is not acceptable. That is, at least that's the way that they can support democracy to grow in Nigeria. So the civilians should also be tracked. Those with those financial powers, they should track them, bring them to book, just like they're also treating the military. They are all culprits. They are all together in this.
Dr. Makri, I think you were interested in answering that question. Why did you go ahead?
Well, I think he has answered it, actually. You know, because, you know, what happens with coups, like I told you, the consequences, you know, are the deterrent factors that we have. If you fail, you know you are going to die, you know, and of course in Nigeria, it has happened without any kind of intervention. I remember some coups in Nigeria where, you know, the coup plotters were caught, who attempted it, and then a lot of civilians came to beg. In fact, recently, there was one. I think in the last government or so, or last two governments, where they were begging, and the death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. Okay, so if you win, then you win the trophy, which is the government. But if you lose, then you have to die. So these are the consequences that come with, you know, the coup plotting.
With that, it becomes quite clear that democracy is not only protected at the ballot box, but it is protected by strong institutions and a constant vigilance. This moment calls for accountability, not panic, and reforms that reinforce trust. And of course, we will keep tracking this story. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your input on this matter.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And with that, we go on a quick break. But when we return, much more right here on Breakfast Extra. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Another big report here, and this time Makoko in the lens. Well, Makoko is more than a settlement. It's a home, a livelihood, and also history for Nigerians. Today, residents are on the streets. Better put, they're on the waters, protesting also demolitions they say were sudden, unlawful, and cruel. The question remains, who protects the urban poor when development arrives without warning? Well, our correspondent followed the protest from Makoko to Alausa, speaking with displaced residents, civil groups, and also officials. What emerged is a picture of fear, anger, and also unresolved questions about land rights and also due process. Here's that special report by Victor Badagry.
Began calmly in the early hours of the morning as residents, activists, and civil society groups converged at Ikeja under bridge.
Today is not just a protest to demand shelter for the living. Today is also a day to demand justice for those whom you have killed.
Did the Lagos State government agree with the elders to kill their babies and their children in the process of demolition? Is that what you're asking me? So what we are just asking is for the state to halt all illegal demolition.
They marched through major roads towards the State Assembly in Alausa, hoping to draw legislative attention to the plight of displaced residents across the state.
They destroy so many properties of our market because we are selling motor.
Everywhere. Oh God, lost this school.
After trekking nearly 6 kilometers from Ikeja under bridge to the Lagos State House of Assembly in Alausa, the protesters say their message is clear. Development must not come at the cost of displacement, as they await a response from the Lagos State government.
But the response they got wasn't what they expected. Several tear gas canisters were fired at the crowd, scattering the protesters.
The police officer just shot this woman
and leaving some with injuries.
While here, when they are raising abuses on me as Commissioner of Police Lagos State, that I was vomiting blood, they call me all kind of name, but in my profession, I should work under pressure. No gunshot was fired. What we use is the minimum force that is allowed in protests when people become rioters. After all, we are inside with them. If it's going to cause any injury or death, it will cause it to equally police personnel. Nobody is killed, nobody is injured, but we've been able to successfully dispatch them, because if we allow them to continue to sit on the road, upcoming vehicle can run into them, and it's not safe for even them and equally other road users.
It is absolutely ridiculous, in my view, just ridiculous. And they said Commissioner of Police is telling me I cannot afford to allow them to block a public fairway. I cannot allow you to destroy people's homes and make them homeless. Are we all mad in this country?
With the protesters gone, security personnel still maintain a strong presence at the State Assembly, as questions remain over the use of tear gas and the concerns raised by the affected protesters. In Lagos, for News Central, Victor Badagry.
Joining us now is News Central's correspondent, Victor Badagry and Alex Omo-Nise, the President Center for Human and Socio-Economic Rights. Gentlemen, you're both welcome. Victor, I'll start with you very quickly. What triggered the latest round of demolitions in Makoko?
Well, it's... I really don't know. The Makoko incident has been happening for quite some time now. So the government clearly said that they had informed residents in that place not to build beyond a particular diameter so as not to stretch their lock beyond the barricade that they have apportioned to Makoko residents. But what they saw was that Makoko guys have already been building beyond the prescribed 30-meter away from the transformer. And so the excuses was that initially that they were going to demolish any houses that goes beyond their job description, to which the Makoko residents, of course, agreed to. But what happened next was that the government not only demolished the agreed homes or houses or shanties beyond the barricaded, that's 30 meters away from the transformer, but they went beyond that and went into the hinterlands and kept on demolishing, some of these places, and that's what initially caused the uprising from the Makoko guys. But again, these protests that happened a few days ago was not just about the Makoko residents. It's about every single community that has been affected by these demolitions being carried out by the Lagos State government. So you have Makoko guys, you have the people from Uwurunshuki, you have people from Ajegunle, you have people from Owode-Oniri. So all of them gathered together at the same time to see if they can put a stop to these demolitions once and for all. And of course, demand for compensations and what have you, and so that they can go back to their lives just like every other person. So that was what exactly happened on that protest day.
Now, Victor, from what you observed, because Makoko is it's a community, people's livelihoods, you know, are in that place. Based on your observation, I don't know if you could give me a bit of an estimate, but how many people roughly have been displaced from the community?
You know, you can't have exact figures, but if not close to 1 million person, I'm not sure I'm exaggerating. It's the entire diaphragm of Makoko. So it's not a question of how many persons, basically, but of course, you know, the numbers are actually very, very huge. If you've seen the pictures before, you know that it's a very, very huge and a very big community that has been leveled down by the state government.
All right. Wow. Thank you. Alex, let's come to you, and I'm going to come to you from a human rights perspective now. Victor has just noted that there was regulation in place, that there was supposed to be no building of structures past a certain point. Now, this was flouted, and that's why the authorities moved in to demolish. But he also noted that they demolished way past their jurisdiction. However, I'm asking from a human rights perspective, how lawful was the demolition by the authorities there in Makoko? Let's start with that before we move on to any other community. Alex.
The demolition in whatever disguise is unlawful. And number one, we have a law. We're a country that is guided by rule of law. That before you send a tenant, before you eject a tenant, you must give the tenant a certain period of notice. And after that notice, then you approach a court of competent jurisdiction for owner intention to recover possession. So that means if the Lagos State government really means well and they want to abide by law, a prior notice, official notice of injection ought to have been served to the Makoko residents. And for your information, the Makoko residents has been in that settlement for over 5 to 7 decades. And you can agree with me that their basic needs of livelihood is fishing. And that's why they settle down there. I can see Victor is giving a rough estimation of about 1 million people. We have more than that in Makoko, because that demolition don't only affect those who live on river rights, they also demolish those who are on land. And for your information, and to set the record straight, the government's excuse of clearing certain portions is not correct. The agreement they have with Makoko people was not to build beyond a certain places where the community youth agree and then erect a barricade. And when they came in to demolish, according to those people who are on ground, they said they go beyond far, more than 100 kilometers away, only for them to advertise the kind of structure they want there. It's not because they are under high tension or what have you. It shows that the Lagos State government and its agency are only out to send away the poor living in Makoko on the water. It's not just because...
Why do you think they're out to do that? Why do you think they're out to do that? Have there been any suggestions as to why, what people think the Lagos State government is up to?
What they usually do across the state, when they come to demolish, they give the demolished site to their cronies as a developer to develop. If you want to develop, nobody is against urban development. Nobody is against urban development or renewal. But a development must have a human face. That's what we are saying. You can have your mega city without building your mega city on the bones and blood of innocent people. So there's no justifiable reason for you to displace people without adequate replacement or relocation or compensation. And it's because of their demolition. They always come with policemen and thugs armed to the teeth. And when they were demolishing, and the irony of it in Makoko issue is that people, after demolishing their buildings, they were sleeping on their boat, living on their boat. They went back there, seized the boat, set it ablaze. It shows that it goes beyond development. It shows that the government are out just to give the poor hard way of life. Thank you.
Okay, but Alex, still on you. Now, the government has an obligation to develop, to make amenities available. Now, that is what they owe the citizens. The citizens, however, well, you say that they've been there for almost a decade and they have a right to be there. But where is the in-between here? Where's the middle ground when it comes to what the government has to do when it comes to development and the people's rights? What obligations do you think the government has for these displaced residents, especially now that they have been evacuated?
Okay, if the government wants to develop the place, and the place is already having existing residents, not 10, not to 20 years, the government has to come to a dialogue with the residents and the owners, reach a very good concrete agreement where they will agree on a certain term. Then when the development is coming, if you are relocated, yes, the government can develop. Nobody is against it. The government can take over your land for public use only. But there must be an agreement and a proper relocation and compensation for those who are affected by your so-called development. But when this is not happening, then it became otherwise. And people will begin to see it as a hard how do I call it, a punishment on the poor and abuse of office against the innocent citizens. The government ought to have done the right thing. If they have settled with the residents of Makoko or other affected communities, then there must be a provision somewhere in which they must have made 3 months before the execution or demolition.
All right, Dennis. Thank you, Dennis.
I have a question.
Alex, my apologies.
You'll permit me, I would dare to call it a bit of a blunt moment. But I'm just curious to know, maybe let me stick with you, Alex. In terms of course, the obligation that you mentioned and them being given a 3 months notice prior, and then, of course, having the government have to accommodate where they resettle them. Now, when it comes to the issuance of land and, of course, suburbia, if I can call it like that, when the building began in Makoko, however many years ago, was the land issued to them by the government? Because you tend to find a situation, and I ask this because you tend to find a situation where sometimes people tend to settle in land that was not necessarily given to them. And if it was not given to them, then the government has the right to come back and repossess the land, or land grabbing, however you want to define it. So was the land given to them by the government initially? And what the government is doing now, is it out of scope or out of question?
That question is very funny. If the land was given to them by government, that I cannot answer because I am not a resident of Makoko, even if my relatives were living there. But the only thing that I know that I can say here is that people that live on waterways will have to, some people will have come there first, like we have on the land, where some people will claim the Omonile title or landowner, and then they will not just come and build without meeting some chiefs or community leaders that will have apportioned them a certain area to build or erect their structure. And you can as well, like I said, this Makoko, as a case study, 99% of them are into fishing. They are into fishing, so their work is on the waterway, and they also live on water. And it is easy for them to access water when they live close by than to go and be living in Ketu, while they have to, their canoe is at Makoko. You understand? So then if government even want to settle them, even if they are illegal occupants, there are processes that the government that they have laid out in their tenancy law of Lagos State. The process also must be followed. You are the people, you are the one that make this law, and you are the one that is even abusing the law. That's what we are saying, that you need to obey the law. If you give a rule for the citizen to follow, then you as a leader must lead by example. So that's what we are saying, that for whatever reason government may have to demolish or take over that place, a proper arrangement and agreement must have been entered into, or go to the court of law, approach court. The court will now rule if you are to demolish the place, it will not come from the court. Not that you wake up overnight and then move thugs and policemen to a community, then overnight around 4 a.m., then demolish their structures and then set it ablaze.
So sorry, Alex. Sorry, Mr. Alex. Just to confirm, are you basically saying that no prior correspondence was given to them at all? This came to them at a point where nobody was aware that demolition was going to be taking place?
Yeah, you can hear that from Makoko people. They say it and reiterate repeatedly that there was no prior notice before they come. And for this Makoko issue, it started in 2012 when they first invaded the wire axis of the water, very close to the Senate building of the University of Lagos. Then it was an issue of moving closer to the bridge, that they are moving closer to the third mainland bridge. Then I was the vice chairman of Committee for Defense of Human Rights in Lagos. We were also drafted into the advocacy. And we went there. There was agreement that don't build beyond this place. That was at Iwaya water side, very close to Unilag. That was done without shedding blood. But this, there was no any prior notice according to the people who live. And like I said, and I repeat, I did not live in Makoko. I have family who that live in Makoko. But my involvement in this coalition against forced eviction and demolition in Lagos was my organization advocacy for the traders in Owode Oniri that we have been championing since 2025.
Alex, thank you very much. It's very difficult to squeeze this in, but I was going to say this, especially that I need Mbadike to listen out here. And of course, Inam, you asked a very interesting question, whether the extended period of time, whether the land was given to them. But by the Nigerian general principle in Nigerian law is that no, you cannot claim a piece of land just because you have actually been there for a long time. Under Land Use Act 1978, all land in each state is vested in the government, who hold it in trust of the people. What individuals have is not ownership in the absolute sense, but a right of occupancy. And yes, right of occupancy could also mean that the land could become yours eventually, but only in very specific cases, especially when it comes to rural settlements. And even this is mandated on custom itself. So I think the long and the short answer, Inam, is that yeah, the land doesn't belong to the Makoko residents because they've been there even for extended periods of time, but they've been allowed to stay there based on rights of occupancy. And if they've been given these stipulated areas to reside, then it's the government's prerogative if they want to move them. But it's how they've been moved that's the problem now, and that's what we're seeing with the forced evacuations and demolitions. Real quick, Mbadike, what has come out of the protest? Is there any way out for the residents? We've run out of time. If you can be summary in your response.
Oh, well, of course, if you have been following, a couple of the organizers were charged to court a couple of days ago, and as we speak, they've perfected their bail conditions and should be back to the court sometime in March 11 as the trial begins. Of course, before that, I'm pretty sure Alex knows that they've also been saying that they will be back in the streets to continue the protest until their demands are met. And of course, the police have also said that there's no problem as long as you want to keep coming out. To also keep coming out to provide the security that you also need. Only if you work in tandem with the regulations guiding protest. Do not forget that one of the issues they said they had with the protesters was that they filtered into the road and blocking the entire Awolowo way and not allowing vehicles to go about their business. And so on and so forth. So the protest, of course, everyone seems to be calm. Those who have to go treat themselves are currently in the hospital. Do not forget one of the members of the protesters was hospitalized. And we hear now that she's currently in Lasu where she's recovering. So those injured are getting themselves, better, and those who were tear gassed and are still feeling the pains are probably in their houses, recuperated until when they decide to, put themselves together and go back to the streets in protest. I need to put this out again. The Commissioner of Police yesterday went to Ode, near one of the communities that also came out in protest that Wednesday. And he went to meet with them to see how he can, sort out the issues. Because one of the key things he said was that particular market, a motor spare market, was not demolished by the state government. That it was land grabbers who actually carried out that act. And of course, I did ask from the occupants of that place, and they actually said the same thing. So, but what they are not sure of is whether these land grabbers or land grabbers, as the case may be, were sponsored by the state or not, which of course could be the grounds for that protest. But the Commissioner of Police clearly said that the land grabbers actually, came with police officers from Nasarawa State, to carry out that act. And the land grabber, of course, have been arrested since then and is in custody while investigation is currently on. So that's the much on that. But whether the president will continue or not, Alex, I'm sure he's listening. He will have to tell us what he himself and other comrades plan to do going forward.
I mean, just to interject, gentlemen, I think Mazino as well, I think it's quite clear that development that destroys dignity cannot be called progress. And until planning includes the people, stories like Makoko will continue to repeat themselves. And we can promise you here at Breakfast Extra and News Central that we will stay with you on this particular issue. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Mazino?
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Do stay tuned. I think we have one bulletin coming your way and then more conversation, especially inside of Focus Africa here on Breakfast Extra. We'll be back.
And now the People's Democratic Party has dismissed a federal high court judgment nullifying its November 2025 national convention, insisting its current leadership remains in place. In a statement issued by the party's functional national publicity secretary, Comrade Ini Emenobong, said the court declined to grant the order of a memorandum sought before it because doing so would amount to sitting on appeal over decisions of courts of coordinate jurisdiction. Apologies. Now, the party disclosed that it has instructed its legal team to immediately file an appeal and pursue all available legal options to protect its position. And away from that, President Bola Tinubu and former President Goodluck Jonathan were among the dignitaries who attended the funeral rites of the late Bayelsa State Governor Senator Lawrence. Wow, Mazino, you're going to help me with that surname. Yes, and the Quirium Mass was conducted at St. Paul's Catholic Church in Ofoni, Shagbama local government area of Bayelsa State, in a tribute of the 60-year-old late Deputy Governor. President Tinubu, who was represented by the Minister of State, Petroleum Resources, Senator Hainkan Lokpobiri, joined others to eulogize the late Mazino.
We can confidently say Brother Ojako lived a fulfilled and worthy life. One defined ourselves to God, commitment to humanity, and devotion to the development of Bayelsa State and the future. He will be remembered for his intellect, his wisdom, his thoughtful use of proverbs, and the rare ability to combine depth with words.
Everybody speaks good of Lawrence. It's very difficult for a politician who managed to get to the level of a deputy governor of a state to have that kind of image. Lawrence was a good man. He related well with people.
May the soul of His Excellency Senator Lawrence Ojako find repose and abiding love of God. May his memory be forever a blessing.
Now, moving away from that, the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria has launched an electric airport-to-city shuttle bus in a major move to transit to use of green energy and reduce its carbon emission footprint by as much as 74%. The service was launched at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja as FUN officials pledged to transform its mode of operations, the movement of people out of airport, and its energy convention strategy. Former national chairman of the All Progressive Congress and now chairman of FUN board, Abdullahi Gaduje, says that the action by FUN will align Nigeria's aviation sector with global best practices.
Marks an important milestone in FUN's ongoing efforts to improve service delivery, modernize airport operations, and align Nigeria's aviation sector with global best practices. As part of this deployment, FUN is introducing 10 electric shuttle buses and 20 electric saloon vehicles into airport operations.
Ground transportation services will operate through structured, traceable electronic systems. This promotes transparency, enhances revenue accountability, improves passenger convenience, and reduces reliance on cash transactions.
We gather at a time when the impact of climate change is no longer an abstract discussion. It is a lived reality. We see it in rising temperatures, more frequent and extreme weather events, flooding and environmental degradation that threatens our infrastructure, our economy, and the world.
And I would take you to the SADC region of Africa, where in a tit-for-tat move, both South Africa and Israel have expelled each other's envoys. Now, while South Africa expelled Israel's top diplomat in the country for violating diplomatic norms, Israel took the same path in retaliation. The diplomatic row started when South Africa's Foreign Affairs Minister declared Ariel Seidman chargé d'affaires at the Israeli embassy persona non grata and gave him 72 hours to vacate the country. Hours later, Israel announced similar actions against South Africa's ambassador to Palestine, Sean Edward Biavelt. Relations between South Africa and Israel have been frosty since South Africa accused Israel of genocide against Palestinians at the International Court of Justice, a charge Israel has rejected. Now we go on a quick break, but when we return, one more hour with us right here on Breakfast Extra.
Still Breakfast Extra, and a very interesting segment about to start. It's our Waka Waka World segment. And today on Waka Waka World, well, it takes us to Badagry. It's a quiet coastal town with very heavy history for Nigeria and West Africa generally. Once a major port in the transatlantic slave trade, Badagry was a final departure point for thousands taken across the Atlantic. Today, its relics and monuments still speak. So, if only we're willing to listen. So let's take this segment here, Waka Waka World, as the Waka Waka Doctor takes us to Badagry.
This is Badagry. It's a place that's rich in history and, of course, culture. A popular tourist destination for those who feel like visiting Lagos. This place has echoes of a very dark past that still lingers on. Today, we're going to walk a path that has been walked by thousands. And I want to show you the brutal part of it. Badagry, a name that echoes with the cries of millions. Known today for its beauty, rich culture, and serene beaches. And serene for centuries, Badagry was a major port in the transatlantic slave trade, a gateway to untold horrors for many Africans. And this is where our journey begins. Welcome to Badagry, a place that's quiet on the surface, but if you listen, you can hear the cries, the pain, and the anguish of our ancestors. This is a place built for slaves. It's a place that has housed thousands and thousands of my ancestors, your ancestors. This story is about the price of human greed. Welcome, world travelers. I am Waka Waka Doctor, and I'll be your tour guide on this journey of Waka Waka World.
Where we are currently is known as the Brazilian Barracoon of Chief Seriki Faremi Williams Abbas. During the period of slavery, this is the compound they used to keep the slaves. There are 40 rooms in this compound, and in each of the rooms, 40 slaves are kept in each of the rooms. Minimum of 1,600 slaves are kept in this compound for 3 months. Before the arrival of the slave ship, they will now move the slaves out from the cell, across the port, across the Lagos Port Novo Lagoon, down to a place called Point of No Return. All over the world today, the compound we are is known as Brazilian barracoon. A barracoon is a Spanish word, meaning a slave cell where they used to keep the slaves. Is the cenotaph of the man who owns this compound, called Seriki Williams Abbas, a former slave that later became a slave trader. Seriki Williams Abbas, the name of the first slave owner, the second slave master, Mr. Williams, and the Muslim title given to him. Over here are some of the European products used in exchange of slaves in West Africa. In Badagry, a value of an umbrella was 40 slaves. A bottle of gin in Badagry was 10 slaves. These are the cannons. We have the cannon gun. The bigger size of the cannon gun was 100 slaves, while the shorter one for 40 slaves. The den gun was also used in exchange of 40 slaves.
This war vexes the hell out of me, like it annoys me. Do you know what it means to actually sell another human being for umbrella? You mean to say me, head to toe, 40 of us, one umbrella. Imagine this. You're a young man, a warrior, or a woman, a mother. You live peacefully in your village until one fateful night, your life changes forever. You are captured, shackled, marched for days without food or water. Then you arrive here in Badagry. Wow. Oh boy. You have to think and ask yourself, what level of greed would make you put another human being in this condition? Like, honestly, ask yourself. You just look at some of these things, and if it doesn't burn a fire inside you, I don't know what else will.
Where we are is the male slave cell. The male and the female are kept into separate slave rooms for them not to have any sexual intercourse within their cells. 40 slaves, 40 able men are kept in here, and that is the only ventilation for 40 slaves. And this is where they were kept for 3 months. These are the plates, these are the ceramic bowl. Each of the plates was using exchange of 10 slaves, meaning 50 slaves were using exchange of 5 ceramic bowls. This is the money we spend in Africa in the olden days, called cowrie. Yoruba called this uweyo. But when the white people came to us in Africa, they refused to accept these from we the blacks as a means of exchange. And this led to the introduction of trade by barter. Where we are is the female slave cell. 40 female and their children are kept in there for 3 months. And that is the only ventilation for 40 female and their children. That is where they excrete, that is where they urine, that is where they did their messes. Some of the pregnant women were also captured as slaves, and they gave birth to their baby in there. And don't forget, a child of a slave automatically is also a slave. We have the picture of some of the slaves returning. Here's the picture of the man called Santos Silva. If you have some friends, some relatives, bearing names like Santos, Silva, Cole, Coca, Smith, Johnson, Williams, Salvage, Salvador, Daminda da Costa da Rocha, Ricardo, they are all slave returning.
What did we do? What did we do to deserve this? Why? It's inhumane. It's ridiculous. 40 people in this tiny space with one window. They eat here, they sleep here, they urinate here, they defecate here. This forbidden well. It is said that every slave who was sold in Badagry had to walk around it 3 times and then drink from it. Why? To make them forget. How's that for tragic irony? Tell us a little bit about the forbidden well.
The spot where the government of Nigeria called this well slave spirit attenuation well. Attenuation means to weaken or to lust. At this spot, they will stop the slaves, fetch the water out for them to drink. After they drank water from this well, they are to become less aggressive. They are to lose their memory and their senses. It took the slaves 3 to 4 months while on the voyage of the ship before getting to their final destination. The main reasons why they used to weaken their memory and their senses was this. In the slave cargo, It may be 800 slaves in a single cargo. It may be more than that, depending the size of the ship, with about 10 to 15 European slave dealers that will be taking the slaves down to their final destination. So when the ship gets to the high sea, the slaves want to make use of their total number to revolt against their masters in order to hijack the ship from their masters so that they can gain their freedom. So it was later that the European slave dealers, in collaboration with the black chiefs, they came up with the idea of digging this well. A charm was added to the water, and the water became poisonous. Mostly, some will ask, is the water still effective, or the water is no more effective? Nobody can answer that question, because in the whole of this island, nobody drinks and fetches water from this well.
This is the forbidden well. It's not just a source of water, but it's a psychological manipulation of the human being. The Badagry slave market is where unspeakable things happened. Men, women, and children are auctioned off to the highest bidder. European traders set up shop here, and thousands of Africans were sold off to plantations in the Americas and the Caribbean.
The island we have is called Berefu Island, G-B-E-R-E-F-U. Berefu is a Yoruba word, meaning a dry land. An island is a place surrounded by water. Here we have a lagoon, while the other side of the island we have Atlantic Ocean. And during the period of slavery, nobody lives in this island. When someone is captured living here, he or she will be captured as a slave. And the slave routes that leads to the point of no return, formerly before it used to be a narrow path, while the slave will have to walk in a single file down to the point of no return. While walking down there, a slave don't put on cloth, a slave don't put on shoe. The only cloth only found on their body is the big chain around their neck, the chains around their hands, and the shackles around their legs.
Here, you will be sold like cattle, stripped of your dignity, separated from your family, and then you're sent on a journey you might never return from. They call this the point of no return. But let's not get it twisted. Our ancestors were not passive victims. Oh, no, 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 no. They resisted with every ounce of strength they had. Entire kingdoms fought back. The Yoruba, the Dahomey, the Benin Kingdom, they fought tooth and nail to defend their people from the slave raids. They didn't always succeed, but their courage, their defiance, it will always live on.
And welcome back from Waka Waka World, where we took a visit to Badagry, and I've got one candidate here in the studio. Maybe I'll call her a student of Nigerian history. I don't know, you've never been to Badagry, have you?
Nope.
Well, welcome to class. Let me tell you.
But I mean, I've been to a few places, Mazino.
Well,
let that be known that I've actually been to a few places in Nigeria before he comes for me for not having gone to
we do
Badagry.
not dispute this, but I just wanted to let you know how big a deal Badagry is when it comes to the African region, especially with slavery, because that was the point where everything kind of like, that was it, point of no return. But it's a very big shame. Before the start of the show, we're talking about how we do not value our assets or our heritage or our anything that's African. It's a big shame that most people who even live in Lagos haven't been to Badagry. And people who even grew up in Lagos haven't been to Badagry to witness or to enjoy what it was or what it is or how it plays into the African history and transatlantic history as well when it comes to slave trade. But I think you should go. I think it's a very interesting, introspective moment for most people who have, as they see how people were treated and what became a totally different, I won't say race, but what begat the, well, when you see African Americans or, African people of descent from Africa, but not of original origin from where they are. And I think everybody has to experience that, whether as a Nigerian or as an African, and see where your place was in history. It's a beautiful place, actually.
I mean, we find that now. You see a lot of, people abroad looking at, well, I'm 5% Nigerian and 15% Ghanaian or whatever. I think, that's where it comes from. But I think, I don't know, it struck me as well when Waka Waka Doctor mentioned you sell for people for an umbrella. just an umbrella.
Oh, yeah, by the way, we also got religion from that, so let's not forget that. And
That's a
if we
story for
start to
another day.
talk about that, then we're
That's
going
a story for
to... very,
another day.
I know.
Let's not even go there.
But then
for another
again,
day.
yes, we did sell for a lot of things, including religion or tradition and all of that. It was a robbery, but Badagry was where we highlighted today inside of our Waka Waka World. Just in case you didn't see it, you can catch that up on YouTube for News Central. We're, of course, on YouTube, where you can always go back on the show and see what happened from before. There's still something, lots to discuss here inside of Breakfast Extra. We have one more segment, our Focus Africa segment. Well, this time we're going to be taking a look at something that's very Nigerian, and that's the trial for former Minister Alison-Madueke. And this trial, well, it got the eyes of the world only just last week. That's the conversation we'll be going into right after. Do stay with us, and we'll be back with that one inside of Focus Africa. On Focus Africa today, our subject, well, it's of a Nigerian origin, but has big African implications. Now, for years, Diezani Alison-Madueke symbolized power, privilege, and also unanswered questions. Now, her trial has reopened conversations around corruption, accountability, and trust in public office. Allegations include luxury spending, bribery, and also abuse of office during her time as Nigeria's petroleum minister. Beyond the individual, the case speaks to a larger issue. Can high-profile corruption cases finally deliver justice, or do they only remind citizens of how long accountability takes?
Now, to examine the legal process and the wider implications, we are joined by Adeni Kunu, international journalist and researcher.
Oh, I beg your pardon. We were supposed to be joined by Adeni Kunu, but instead we have a substitute in. I'm sorry, I should have told you that from before. But we have with us Toby Balogu in the studio, legal practitioner. And of course, we also have To Ojerujakbo joining us via Zoom. To, welcome and thank you very much for joining us on short notice. Inam, do I give it back to you if you want to fire off the first question?
Put my words back in my mouth. I'll start with you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
My question to you is, what are the key allegations Nigerians should pay attention to in this trial, and how strong is the evidence as publicly, displayed right now?
The trial in the UK, the crux of the trial in the UK is basically bribery allegations against the former minister. That's counts 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and I think 7. Are alleged that she received payments that she ought not to have received in the course of her responsibilities as minister. However, the trial, having commenced, has shed more light on a lot of things that I think Nigerians should pay attention to. And it's also sort of backtracks to us, even as Nigerians, because the trial, everything that has happened in it, the players, the alleged people who paid the bribes to the minister, where most of the incident occurred were in Nigeria. It was during a time as minister, as a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So it doesn't necessarily make so much sense that the trial is even happening in the UK to begin with. So it makes us come back. It requires us to come back home and take a look at ourselves as to why is this happening in the UK, because the entire incident, which is the crux of this trial, occurred between 2011 and 2015, and this trial has only commenced in 2023. With proceedings happening in the last couple of days, earnestly. And in the course of it, you have to also understand that the people who have allegedly paid bribes to the minister are not before the court. So how exactly are you going to establish that these bribes were paid? Is there a word, maybe some interviews were conducted earlier where maybe investigations and everything revealed that bribes were allegedly paid to the minister? But as it is, these people are not before the court. How is the minister, or how is even the prosecution supposed to prove its case that these bribes were paid when the people who allegedly paid the bribe are not in court? So it's going to be a very interesting one up to when the decision will be handed down, because as a criminal defense attorney myself, I've been involved in cases where, for example, there was a trial I did sometime last year where it happened that people who, lower cadre staff, they played a minor role in the whole incident. So the prosecuting agency packed all of them and brought them to court. The judge found at it that these are not people who make decisions in this company to have effected this kind of allegations against them. Why are you not bringing the main people before the court? Ultimately, I can't really go into details, but ultimately we won the case. It's on appeal now, but the fact that these people are not in court is going to really, from my own experience, it's going to really hinder the prosecution
establishing the charges before the court.
That's a very peculiar note to raise there, Mr. Balogun, because in this case, Diezani has pleaded not guilty.
Yes.
So exactly how would the court have to prove, beyond public suspicion, just public suspicion,
yes,
how would they prove that she is guilty? What lies before them? What effort lies before them to prove that she is absolutely guilty?
So now,
and Toa, we are coming to you. Apologies, but I wanted to jump on that train.
Okay, so you would understand that it's a criminal trial. So it's not necessarily it's not the court of public opinion. It is what is before the court. And being a criminal trial, they must prove this case beyond reasonable doubt. Of course, it's not like beyond any doubt per se, but it's just beyond reasonable doubt. And this is what I'm trying to say. The issue of having to prove this case beyond reasonable doubt is what is the possibility of being able to, assuming that even these things occurred and everything. You said some individuals paid bribes to the minister, and the bribes influenced, or you said the bribes were not supposed to have been paid. They were paid, they were allegedly paid, and you didn't bring these people to court to come and say their side of the story if they paid. Even give the former minister the opportunity for our legal team to cross-examine them as to maybe these alleged payments, what were they for? So now it's just the word of the prosecution that payments were made, and that was it. And also, you have to also understand, I've gone through the prosecution opening statement, and even in the prosecution opening statement, whilst they insist that bribes were paid to the minister, she took financial advantage, allegedly. In the same statement, the prosecution said there's no evidence before the court to show that these alleged sums allegedly received influenced the minister's job to award the contracts to entities who were not supposed to have the contracts in the first place. So you have to ask yourself, you have to come back and ask yourself that what really are we really doing here? If you said she received a bribe, but the alleged bribe, there is no evidence before the court, there's no evidence on the side of the prosecution to show that these bribes influenced our decision to award contracts to people who were not supposed to have contracts in the first place. So it's going to be an interesting one, which of course I'll be following closely, but there are other issues there. For example,
I'll let you give that example because I want to ask To a question.
Oh, please go ahead.
To, you're still there with us now. To, let's take a look at exactly why this is happening outside of Nigeria and the implications here on our justice system. I'm wondering why exactly, or what implications it has where the Nigerian justice institutions are unable to try or even try these high-level corruption cases. What does it say about our justice system?
Let me first of all make one issue clear when it comes to issue of bribery. And I've been privileged to practice in Nigeria as a lawyer and also as a defense counsel. And I've been privileged to observe criminal proceedings here in the UK, which I'm currently based now temporarily. And I'll tell you, as a matter of fact, when it comes to issue of bribery, both in Nigeria and in the UK, if you look at the theory about bribery, you discover that the giver necessarily must not be part of the process. As a matter of fact, the prosecutor is at liberty to charge whoever he wants to charge, either the giver or the receiver. What should be the base and position for the conviction is the circumstantial evidence, which the opening statement which I've read would have stated clearly. The first question would be the homologous amount of money and what is that money for? And if you look at the bribery regime in the UK, there's every tendency that conviction may be secured. Then when we look at it from the perspective of the judicial process here, you discover that this matter in question happens, Diezani Alison-Madueke was petroleum minister between 2010 and 2015. And you also recall that he became the OPEC chairman between 2014 and 2015. So if you look at it holistically, between that time and in 2023, when the UK government picked it up, you discover that there's been an holistic investigating process. Here in the UK, investigation takes longer than the court process. Then looking at it in a Nigerian judicial process, you discover that we have more media trial, we have more of reliance on the statements of the defendant. If you look at most of our judges, most of our judgments on criminal cases, on all cases, are based on not independent investigation of security agencies or law enforcement agencies or the prosecuting agency. Is more or less on statements accrue from the defendant. So the court is tied. We just cap up issues, we take them to court, and it's even when they are in court, investigations are being made. It's even on television, we get to know, oh, this. So there's every tendency of high level of compromise in such processes. So that is the implication. We should not be looking at the judges. Basically, we should be looking at the prosecuting arm of Nigerian government, what they do before bringing matters to court. So that should be the larger picture of the issue.
I mean, it's quite clear that it's going to be a complicated and a challenging case, but I'd like to hear from you, still on you, what jurisdictional challenges can complicate this case?
Well, basically, there is no, when you look at issue of the bribery, and if you look at the evidence thus far that is between the public domain, you discover that the said money in question, one you should know is a minister of petroleum. First of all, you should look at it. She's the minister of petroleum. Then she's also the head of the OPEC, which is an international organization. Then, if you look at what the UK government is saying, they are not charging her on the alleged money laundering cases in Nigeria. They are only talking about issues that happens within the territory of the United Kingdom. And here in the United Kingdom, I'll tell you as a matter of fact, money can be paid to you for the purpose of influencing a decision in Nigeria. The question when the intelligence, when it comes to the intelligence gathering on that particular amount of money, here deals on accountability, here deals on data. So when a money leaves your account, basically, there must be a trigger point from the financial institution. So what they are saying is that if you look at evidence thus far, the fact that the said money, the 200 million pounds they are talking about, was spent here in the UK, was given out in the UK using the credit card or the debit card of one of the giver in question, which can be seen as an accessory. So it depends on the bargaining tools, because issue of financial crime, bribery, they also in the UK, they practice what we call the plea bargaining system, whereby they may concede to some level of withdrawing the giver or pleading for a lower offense in this regard. So there is no jurisdictional change, but the other level of it is the fact that in Nigeria, that question, that subject matter, which is tried in the UK, cannot be resuscitated in Nigeria. Like I told you, any transaction traced to that 2 million pounds that she's been tried here in the UK cannot be tried in Nigeria, but that does not elevate her from every other bribery and corruption cases in Nigeria.
Okay. You
if I could just interject, why is that? Why would it not be possible for those charges to be tried in Nigeria? Because she was the minister in Nigeria.
Now, the question is that what are the information in, let me make it clear, though it's a bribery cases, but if you look at the Money Laundering Act regime, generally, internationally, it has no jurisdictional restriction. That is why you see the former governor of Delta State, James Chibiri, was tried in the UK when such amount of money was traced within the territory of the United Kingdom. It has no jurisdictional listing. There are two things United Kingdom would have done if they have full confidence in Nigeria judicial system. Is one, is either to partner with the EFCC or ICPC and forward the details to them. That is on their own discretion. But they can also prosecute her because that said amount of money is within the territories of the United Kingdom. A good example, I had an experience whereby I record a particular amount of money from Nigeria, from my Naira account in Davat, and immediately entered my UK account. The account was placed. See, I provide explanation because obviously it has left the borders of Nigeria to the United Kingdom. That has a financial, prudent, investigative, and analytic process. So until I provided evidence, that was when my account, my bank uplifted that this is. So it's within the territories of the United. You could see that all the transaction that was done, the hotel she stays, and every other thing is in the UK. Now, what will now happen if that money is recovered? Yes, it will now become a bilateral relationship between Nigeria and UK to see that money will be repatriated. But as it is, This is within the UK system.
Okay, thank you very much, To. Back in the studio here with us, Toby, I wanted to know, since we're on the subject of her finances and all, let's talk about how pivotal the allegations of luxury spending are to this case. Exactly how pivotal is that for the prosecution? Why does that matter, luxury spending and the gifts that, because that's mostly how most people came about or are aware of the case, especially in a country where you have very short attention span. Once you talk about high-level spending, luxury, you've caught people's attention. Why is that pivotal here in this case for the prosecution? So,
flowing from what my learned colleague said earlier, you have to understand that I think he's maybe conflating the issues. The issues before the UK is not necessarily money laundering or anything, it's bribery. And the kind of bribery, there was barely any alleged payment exchanged via cash. It was alleged that she went to Harrods, she went to several luxury stores, and items were acquired on her behalf. They were gifts. So there has to be a difference. We have to establish what we are talking about. They were alleged gifts that were given to her or allegedly acquired on her behalf. Okay. So it wasn't like maybe she took money from, according to what is before the court again. I'm strictly talking based on what is before the UK court as it is. What is before the court is that certain individuals acquired several things for her, houses where she was using, furnished it for her. She stayed there, they were all luxury apartments, luxury shopping, expensive shopping and everything. But there was no cash gifts necessarily exchanged between the parties. So now, why we have to also...
And this is criminal, why?
That's the bribery.
Okay. So like instead of monies, we're going to give you untraceable funds, untraceable items.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. So
that's the point we have to establish. There was no money necessarily exchanging hands. It was an accusation. There were accusations of going here and there, buying luxury stuff. So now there's also an issue that has come up in the course of, as at yesterday, the defense team for the minister was, in the course of the trial, established before the court that within 2011 and 2013 or 14, the minister was not in the country as at some periods when certain commodities or certain items were purchased. So now what the prosecution is trying to do, from my own understanding and from the records before the court, is more or less like this individual bought all these things and the prosecution is trying to pin it on the minister. So now the minister was not in the country for like a period of time and these
so you
items...
can't pin it on her?
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
That's the case of the prosecution. That is what is before the court.
Mm-hmm.
So now, you are saying that all these things were acquired on behalf of the minister, for the use of the minister. But within a certain period of time, she wasn't even in the country. Her passport records were tendered to show where she was as at the time these things were being done. And yet, we were expected to just assume that everything that was bought within that period of time, the entire investigation period, was done on behalf of the minister. So these are the issues why I think, again, it would have been necessary for the individuals who are also involved in this thing to be before the court. Because like I said, I believe it is very important because it is practice. You're supposed to establish the connection between these things. It's just the word of the investigators. Let them come to the court and say, okay, we paid this money. It was for so purpose. And again, I have to go back to the point I made earlier. The prosecution statement says that there is no evidence before the court to show that these payments were influenced, these payments influenced the minister's decision to the advantage of the individuals that allegedly paid this bribe. So it comes back to the same question I keep asking. What exactly are we doing before the court? Also, the defense, usually in criminal proceedings, one of the very essential elements is fair hearing. So the minister has been stuck in the UK since, I think, 2015 or so. She hasn't been allowed to return to Nigeria. And in the course of the allegations against her, part of the defense is that most of these things that she's been accused of buying, purchasing, acquiring, were reimbursed. They weren't even necessarily to our own gain. They were reimbursed. I'll give an example, and this is before the court. I'm not saying anything outside what is before the court. There was a payment, an alleged payment of about maybe £6,000, is in the opening statement of the prosecution, that was paid for us, so allegedly paid by one of the people who paid the bribe, who allegedly paid the bribe, as school fees for our son. Yes, allegedly, or school fees or something, or placeholder, something about school. The funds were reimbursed to the payer because the payment was paid by the minister or someone else. The point I'm trying to say is that the minister has the defense she could have relied upon, saying that there are evidence that this payment, these alleged payments or these alleged purchases were reimbursed to the people who made them. But she hasn't been allowed to return to the country to probably lay her hands on maybe some of these documents or some of this evidence to show that these things happen. But on the record there was an example of something like that where the payment was reimbursed to the payer. So the point I'm trying to say is I don't want to jump into conclusion because I'm not the judge and I'm not one of the defense counsel on record, but it's going to make for an interesting case, especially when the decision is eventually handed down.
Absolutely interesting. Toho, I'm sure you have something to say because we're almost out of time, but if you have anything to add to that, I do have one last question for you, so be summary in this submission, please.
Okay, well, what I just wanted to clear is the fact that bribery necessarily, there was no misconception on my earlier submission. Bribery is not necessarily be money giving, it can be other incentive. So you must not necessarily be in the UK for the purpose of that bribery items to be passed across. I may be, a good example, I may be in Nigeria, I may be in the UK and ask somebody, okay, you want to do this, I want you to do this for so-so person. But in the influence of a return or for the purpose of favoring or influencing my decision. So the question would be, yes, who instructed the giver to give the person? I am the one. And to what benefit is that? If I promise to give you in the studio now 1 million naira for the purpose of my own contribution, and I ask a third party to give you or give you a car, it must not necessarily be money. But just like he stated earlier, we want to see the perception, that is the outcome of the trial. But in a bigger way, is something we all need to learn when we look at the investigative process in Nigeria. It's a process that took time. The court process will be so short and brief.
All right, Toho, so now final question to you. How does political influence, whether past, present, or even future, how do they normally affect these kinds of cases of this magnitude?
Let me give you a good example that is within the public domain. You look at the one of former governor of Kogi State. You agree with me, Yaya Bello, you agree with me that before the EFCC chairman came out openly to say that if he did not prosecute Yaya Bello, he will resign or something like that, in a situation like that. But you could see that at that particular point in time, there were rumor and silent observation that the relationship between him and the presidency are not in good terms. But when such thing has aligned, when he was made a member of the committee, you discovered that the cases that the EFCC chairman rushed to court, rushed to the media to open all evidence, that we all believe that even the case will be done within 1 day or 2 days, and Yaya Bello will be convicted. You could see where it is now. We could mention so many cases you can ever think about. You see the one of the former governor of Kano State.
Yep, but this is a case outside of Nigeria. Do you think that it will have the same impact, like the political?
No. As a matter, okay, when you talk about outside Nigeria, it has no political. There can never be any influence in that regard. The only thing I believe, Nigeria will be looking at now is the outcome of the case. And you can see that Nigeria has made several efforts to see how the former deputy senate president can serve his presidency term, and he was declined. So this cannot be influenced.
Okay, fine. Toby, do you agree?
Yeah.
I do not necessarily agree totally with him. So now, which also dovetail into
you'd have to be very summary because we're out of time.
Like I said, there are a lot of individuals that played individual roles in this whole entire transaction. But right now, it is the minister who is being singled out. And I believe that is because of her position as a minister and her position as a member of probably the regime before Buhari's regime. So if, again, I believe they want to do a thorough case, all the individuals, if you are paying a bribe, paying a bribe to someone is an offense. If you are receiving a bribe, it is an offense. So how come the alleged payers of the bribe are not before the court, and only the alleged receiver of the bribe is before the court? And you say that there is no some sort of influence in what is before the UK court as it is. We like to, castigate our judiciary and everything, but like I said, I was opportune to be in court once, and the judge was quite upset that your case is not thorough. You can't bring all these individuals to court without bringing the other people who played active roles in this. And this is the point I'm still standing on, and I believe that based on this, we'll be following up with the case and see how it goes eventually.
Indeed, we will. Thank you very much, Toby.
Thank you very much for
Thank you very much, To, for joining us, especially on short notice. And we'll be expecting the 1 million naira you've promised, or the car.
No, I didn't promise that.
We kid.
Okay, I'm passing it to my colleague to do that for you.
Okay, there we go.
I didn't make any promise.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you indeed.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for rounding up the hour, in fact, the entire show for us neatly, because this is the end. This is where we get to say goodbye even to the viewers. I want to say thank you very much for joining us.